and welcome to Olivia's Book Club, the podcast. And I'm still your host, Olivia Fierro. So excited to be traveling basically virtually all around the globe for one of my favorite authors to read and also to talk to. Sally Hepworth is joining us from Australia to talk about her brand new book released as of this moment. If you're listening to the podcast, The Younger Wife. Sally, congratulations. It is definitely one of the most anticipated books of the year, and it was so satisfying. I completely checked out of my family and my life for quite some time until I was done.
Oh, that is just the best news to hear. I'm so excited that it's finally in the hands of people, and hearing that they enjoyed it is just the best thing.
It is so much fun. And you have your readers kind of knowing what they expect to get from you. And so it's kind of, I actually was lucky enough to get a copy of an arc pretty early, and I was sort of saving it as a gift for myself. I was trying to time it right because I wanted it to be fresh in my mind when we had the opportunity to talk close to the release, but also because I just knew I was going to love it. So I thought, I'm going to reward myself when I've been, working and deserving a delightful treat. So please, the book brand new when the podcast is out, set the scene for The Younger Wife.
Okay, so it won't be a surprise to anyone who's read any of my previous books to know that it is about dysfunctional families, which is my favorite thing to write about. And this particular dysfunctional family are the Aston family, who are made up of Stephen Aston, the father, who is a heart surgeon in his 60s, his wife Pam, who has been a homemaker and the mother of their two adult daughters, Rachel and Tully. Rachel is a single baker of wedding cakes, amongst other things, who's having a bit of trouble in her love life and hasn't been really very interested in dating. And then Tully, who is the slightly neurotic sister, who has got some slightly neurotic habits as well. So the book kicks off with the announcement that Stephen, the patriarch of the family, is going to marry a much younger woman, in fact, younger than both of his daughters. And that announcement is further complicated by the fact that he is still married to Pam, his wife, the mother of his two daughters, and she is in a nursing home with dementia. So the two daughters, Rachel and Tully, aren't thrilled about this news, but it's what I call an upside down book. So we start with the wedding of Stephen and his new younger bride, as narrated by a mystery wedding guest. And we see them get married, we see them go into the sacristy to sign papers, and shortly after they have gone in there, the wedding celebrant runs out and she has blood all over her white pantsuit. And from there, we go a year back in time to find out what led to this, maybe murder, maybe serious injury, who did it, who was the person injured, and what was the series of events that led up to it. And it's told through the eyes of the two daughters, Rachel and Tully, and also the younger wife, Heather. So it was great fun to write. It was all of the things, a little bit of humor, a little bit of darkness, a little bit of issues that are important to women, all the real hallmarks, I think, of a Sally Hepworth novel.
Sally, it is, I'm sure I'm not the only person that once we're done with one of your books, we want to go back to the beginning and kind of revisit, because you now we've got all of this information. So of course, never any spoilers when we're talking about books, but I mean, an epilogue, your prologue and your epilogue are big parts of your writing. So do they come when you're sitting down to craft a book? Do you write in sequence that way? Or are these little, where does that go in the creative process?
Oh, it can be different. Gosh, I would love to start saying, here's my process. This is what I do. And every time I have been brave enough to do that, the next book I do in a completely different way. I think I am, and I do actually have diagnosed ADHD, but no matter what you know about ADHD, I am that person. I'm very scatty. I'm very non-process driven, quite artistic, artistic, yes, and creative with my processes, but also haphazard. And so with this particular book, I had a bit of a plan in place of what I thought was going to happen, but certainly the prologue and the epilogue both surprised me as I wrote them. You know, I had a little thought of this could happen, but often by the time I get certainly to the end, what I had in mind isn't good enough, or it's a bit boring, or I'm bored of it. And I just, it's so important at the beginning and the end. And so the idea of giving someone whiplash with the last sentence or the last chapter or whatnot is just too appealing to me. But is it planned? Usually not.
And it's amazing to me, of course. I mean, that whole that things are able to be fluid and that you can really connect all of these dots is just like, psh. But also you're creating very complex, very real, very quirky and unusual characters, and the way that they interact with each other just makes a lot of sense. So the sister dynamic is a strange one. This
Yeah.
family has an unusual set of circumstances, but it's on the outside, you would think they would be kind of the perfect family, but as grown women, these two ladies have a lot that they're hiding and a lot that
Yeah,
they're handling in maybe not the best of ways.
they do. And it's a question I get a lot. How do you come up with these flawed, interesting, you know, three-dimensional women? And I think, well, this is what women are like. I mean, and certainly the women in my life are all a bit mad, which my favorite people are a bit mad. And also, I'm really lucky to have been surrounded by women of all generations, my mum, my friends, my daughters, my cousins, who are all very real with our flaws and vulnerabilities. We're not the people that pretend that our lives are perfect. We're not the ones who do the perfect mothering and the perfect lunchboxes and the perfect job and the perfect marriage. We're the friends and the people that come in and say, I hate my husband today, or my kids went to school with breakfast cereal in their lunchbox because I didn't have any, you know, food available, or I shouted at my kids, or I don't really know how to do my job. I just made it up today. You know, I said I could do it. And so that honesty and that rawness of women has always been a language I could access, and they're the women I'm interested in and the women that I spend time with, and so they're the women that appear in my books. And if I would just be too bored to have a character that was too nice, too good. You know, they have to be, I want to feel affection for them, but I also want to worry about them a little bit.
Mhm. Yeah, it's you don't want to hang around with phonies and you don't want to craft a phony on a page, and that's not interesting. So you are making so
Yeah.
many moments and relationships very interesting, and I think that there's a lot to relate to in terms of a blended family. I mean, not in this way that a bride of your father's would be maybe your own age. That's more unusual. But
Yeah.
certainly to kind of have to bite the bullet and be nice and welcome somebody to your family that you would never have planned to do so, or don't want any change to come of your lives, is something that a lot of people go through, and it is just so
Mm.
rife for conflict and feeling neurotic and self-conscious in the places where you're supposed to be the most comfortable, which is with your family, and that
Yeah.
makes the dynamics nuts.
It's so true. And it happened recently to two of my friends. One with her father, who married a woman. That woman was just a year older than her, but so around the same age. And also another friend whose father-in-law married a woman who was younger than her. And in these two families, I heard all about it because this is, you know, family disruption and upheaval as adults is kind of new to me. I'm now in my 40s. People are starting to get divorced, you know, death of parents, and this new partnering, either of the siblings or the parents. This is what everyone's talking about. And what was interesting to me is that a younger wife, even a much younger wife, is nothing new, right? We've all seen that a lot. We've seen it in fiction, we've seen it on TV, First Wives Club, all of those things. But one of the things I hate in books and in everything is cliches. And I really didn't want to go into a story about a younger wife that was all of the things that you expect, you know, young, blonde, usually. Fun fact, I'm a younger wife, but only by 6 years, and I'm not the younger wife, but the kind of younger wife I'm talking about. Young, blonde, bit of a gold digger, maybe some daddy issues. We've seen that. And, you know, while maybe there is some merit to that, it really disempowers the older husband, doesn't it? We never see them and what, you know, they're making a decision and what's in it from their end. What are they trying to get out of it? Are their or his, you know, intentions bad? You know, we're always blaming this younger
Right.
woman. And so a bit like I did with the mother-in-law and the good sis, I love to turn things on their head. And yes, it could be true that every younger wife is a gold digger and a, you know, all of those things, but it's probably not realistic that they all are, right? And, you know, let's have a look at things from another perspective. And so that was what I tried to do with the younger wife.
I also love the way that and I know that you're a very visual person and you love fashion and you're very creative and colorful in your personality and in your wardrobing. And the way that you sets the tone for how these three young women look and present themselves reveals, and as women, especially as a female reader, I mean, it really just it reveals so much. It's all the little signs and all the little notes that we take mentally
Yeah.
on other people, and we are able to sort of get to know them by kind of that snapshot. So as you're like thinking about the three ladies, I mean, you're very definitive about what they look like and how they present themselves.
I know, and I don't have a good spiel about that because I don't sit down and figure it out. You know, I write, and it's funny because most people refer to me as a plotter because compared to some of my other writer friends, I am a bit more upfront, make sure I've got a story in place, figure out where it's going to go, even if I don't ultimately stick to it. But I'm so not prescriptive about, right, there's going to be one character who is, you know, very thin and perfect, and another one who is going to be, you know, a larger body positive woman. Or I don't think about that. I think at the beginning I have this plan about a younger wife. I think there's going to be these three characters and they're just talking heads at first. You know, they have these names, Tully, Rachel, and Heather. And then I start writing and I think, gee, Tully's neurotic. Okay, I can visualize her now. She'll be very thin and you know, exercise a lot because she's anxious, and she'll be very you know, perfect with her clothes and hair, and then she appears to me. And then often the books start with the most crazy character, in this case Tully, and then I think, what kind of people would be around her that are sufficiently different, because no one wants to read a book about three of the same people, sufficiently different, but also would kind of challenge this kind of character, and make an interesting relationship. And then they appear. Um, and every now and then, as I go through the drafting process, I'll tweak things, but um, it's pretty led by I hear their voice, I start to see them, they start to appear in my mind. That part of it is yeah, not something you can plan for me.
That's amazing. The theme of sisters, I mean, you mentioned the last book, which I love so much and is now out in paperback here.
Yeah.
So yay. And it's so great. The way that sisters sort of the way your identity is kind of shaped in reaction to, reflection of, competition with, or however, um, in opposition of a sister is something that comes up in your books. And it really
Mm.
is true in this one. I'll just say it carefully not to give anything away, but we get a little bit more perspective about how sometimes that's not organic from the kids. It really is sort of, it can be manipulated by the adults and circumstances around them.
Absolutely. And I'll give you an admission here. I don't have a sister. I felt very sheepish as I wrote The Good Sister last year. And people asked me about my sister, and I said, oh, okay, I'm going
Oh,
to just
she's
put this
terrible.
up
Let's not
front.
talk about her.
I don't have one. But that has been part of my interest in creating sisterly relationships, because I was desperate for a sister when I was growing up. And I had two older brothers that were twins. And so I watched sister relationships from a kind of voyeur perspective, and all of my best friends have a sister, the lucky girl. I was the only one that didn't have one, and a lot of my girlfriends now are like sisters, but I felt like it was a relationship that I missed out on. And so when I'm now the mother of two daughters, I have also been such a voyeur in their relationship and really loved the love, and also been kind of, my eyes have been opened by also the menace of sisters, the fact that they will do anything for each other, but they'll also, elbow them in the head if they try and, wear each other's clothes. And so that's something that I really tried hard to get the nuance of it from the outside perspective. And that just comes as being a really observant watcher of relationships, I think. So
One of the fun things is that since you release your books at home in Australia first, you get to get all of that reader reaction and be very familiar with your new baby being out on its own in the world. And then we move over to the United States. So what has the reaction been so far, and how have you been enjoying talking and sharing this book?
Oh, it's been wonderful. It was 6 months ago that it came out in Australia, and so I've kind of had that. It came out, and it was, it was really well received. It's been my most successful book to date, I guess, and it was,
Congratulations.
thank you, and it was fun because here in Australia, it was out in November, and then we went into summer, so there were just all these gorgeous pictures of people on the beach, reading the book, and that was wonderful. And so now, in a way, coming back and talking about it again it's taken my brain a second because in the meantime I've written another book as well,
Right.
and I've come in, and what's been interesting is that I'm not just going into the same old kind of marketing spiel. I'm thinking about these characters again, and almost with hindsight realizing more things about them, and realizing more things about this adult families and the way that we struggle to keep our family together. You hear about all the fights and all of the dramas, but what's underneath that is just so much love and this need for this foundation of family. And I've really enjoyed talking about that and connecting with people who have had realizations about their family. And so coming to the States in a couple of weeks, I'm just so excited to see what the Americans think. Hopefully it resonates there too. But it's been a lot of fun.
All three of these main female characters in this book, they do want that. They all want a true connection. They all want to feel a
Yeah.
part of something, and seen for who they are, and safe and supported.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, isn't that what we all want? And in fact, we're so likely to hear about the bad sides of family and the fights and the drama. But what I found with two friends that had the younger wives come into their families was, yes, a disruption. Yes, it was an upheaval, but ultimately both of my friends were scrambling to say, okay, this has happened. This new person's in our life, and how do we adjust? Because this is my family and I'm not going to walk away from them, which I think is actually a beautiful thing.
Mhm. Yeah, a lot of growth there.
Mm.
Your books, then how do you get to have fun reading your what is it, the catchy phrase that you like to do of your low star reviews, or
I
have to
have
retire the whole process?
I know. I haven't been looking at the one-star reviews lately. I will be getting back into them because, as you know, I do enjoy them. I honestly think that the next best novel could be found by checking out the reviewers in the one-star reviews, because my God, they can write. They can really describe why they don't like something very succinctly, and that's good writing. I know that takes, hard work, but yeah, I welcome all reviews. I always say that good reviews, bad reviews. If you are reading books and reviewing them, even if you hate my books, you're probably someone I would really like to hang out with, because talking about books, even ones you hate, is just my favorite thing to do. So how lucky are we as writers that people are reviewing us?
Seriously. And do you, with this being that you're always kind of moving towards your next story, Are you still able to detach and sit down with a book of a writer that you enjoy and completely get lost in it? I obsessively think that I would be so scared about writing down what I had just read that I would feel like I would have to like deprive myself of reading if I was a writer.
That does happen quite often, that I will be reading a book in, maybe it's in first person and my book's in third person, and all of a sudden I'll realize that I'm writing in, first person, or I've just suddenly taken on, Lisa Jewell's tone or voice or something, and I catch myself, and that definitely happens. But I couldn't not read books for, I sometimes hear people say that they stop reading for a while they write their novels, and I'm always writing a novel, so I'm always reading. I like to think that while I may become Lisa Jewell for a few paragraphs, I then figure it out and I come back, and what I learn from reading from these amazing authors, is so much more valuable than that moment where I might slip into being them, because I'm learning from the best. And as a just strictly a reader, I can never be without a book. That's just how I was raised. Usually I have two or three on the go, and yeah, not reading's not an option for me.
Absolutely. Amen to that. You mentioned the pictures of enjoying seeing people with your book. And that is, I
Yeah.
mean, the whole book community and the bookstagrammers and all of this, I mean, the visual element of books has become such a big deal. It's just also different and exciting, and it must kind of feed both sides of your brain and all your creative juices.
Yeah, you being on the Bookstagram and interacting with people, you mean?
And
Yeah,
also just knowing that, I mean, they are getting a life of their own, and people are really marketing for you all the
yeah.
time.
I know. It's so lovely, and I have developed relationships with a lot of the Bookstagrammers who have been there from the start. And a couple of years ago, I had this just gorgeous. I was in New York for 3 days. Can you imagine? Remember when you could do that? And I had this gorgeous lunch with a bunch of Bookstagrammers who were all in the New York area, and we now, some of them and I are, I would say good friends, even from the other side of the world. And we're all part of the same industry. We all love books. We're all doing our bit for books. And as I always say, when people say is writing competitive, is Bookstagram competitive, I've never found that. All I have found is this, and it is primarily women for me. These women who love books, they love writing, and they just want to lift each other up. And there's no me and you in publishing. People aren't going to love my book, and so they won't buy Sarah Pekkanen and Greer Hendricks' book, or Kristen Hanna's book, or Leanne Moriarty's book. They're going to buy all the books, and
All the
we are going to buy
books.
all the books because we're the biggest readers, and we're going to love each other and help each other and celebrate each other, because not because we're such good people, but because that is just the way that this works. I kind of think competition is a bit of a lie that we've been sold, and it's just never worked that way for me.
Fundamentally, it's a huge commonality. It's that's what I love
Mhm.
about even hosting a book club is you can have strangers in the room and you're not strangers because you have a mutual interest. And even
Yeah,
better, if you've read the same book, you've got it's like, going to college or so you've
conversation.
got a history, right? You've got something to share. And with books, I mean, we're all compulsive shoppers for books. So I mean, we want all the books.
Correct. Exactly. I know we're all friends from the start. It's a wonderful thing.
I was so sorry if I'm misplacing this, but is this the book where somebody won their name being in this book?
Yes, yes, it is. That was one of the Bookstagrammers, Heather Wisher, who is the character of the younger wife,
What
was
the
a
title
winner.
character?
Yes, and I did say to her, so she entered a competition to win the name of the book, and I said, can I use your first name and last name? And I told her a little bit about the character, and she was really happy with that. So, and it was such a great name. Heather Wisher is just such a good name. So that was why I thought, oh, I'm just going to give her a whole character. But I make the disclaimer in the book and here that it is not meant to be that Heather. It is not based on her, but she's got a great name and she won the rights. So yeah, that's where Heather came from.
That is so cool. Well, if you're ever really writing a homicidal maniac, then please do use my name. I would
Olivia?
absolutely, I would love it.
Okay. I haven't had an Olivia yet in a book, so watch this space.
Yeah, just make her really off the rails, though. Well, Sally, I know you already now have a book in the can. You will be coming to the States to promote The Younger Wife, and all else in your life is thriving, and the family is good, and they're like, I'm sure, just always applauding your success.
Everything is, it's a really nice time in a lot of ways. And my husband Christian is our stay-at-home support, and he looks after the kids and he helps me. And yeah, it's a wonderful time, and I'm very excited to be coming over to the States now to tour. And I hope that the world stays, or is something that we can continue to do this kind of things, and is becomes better for all, I guess.
Yes, and a new appreciation for being able to hop on a plane and go somewhere and engage with other people.
Yes.
It certainly feels more special than ever. Sally, it was so wonderful to speak to you. The Younger Wife, just I mean, plan to ignore your friends and family because you'd like you couldn't step away from it.
Oh, that is
So
so
sorry,
nice.
Nate. And Sally, I apologize because I know that you could hear my dog barking at the beginning. And oddly, as of a month ago or so, he wouldn't even bark. So he really found his voice, and now he's barking nonstop. So my apologies to all.
So my dog's snoring in the background too. I think that's a very comforting back sound now for all podcasts.
Oh, the white noise of the canine snore is totally great. That I am here for. Sally, thank you so much and congratulations. Thank you for your
My
time,
pleasure.
and thank you so much, most importantly, for this book. It was awesome.
Thank you, Olivia. So good to be here, and see you next time.
Okay. So talk to the lovely Sally Hepworth. My dog interrupted us. There's a lot of noise going on. So hopefully I wasn't sounding like an absolute buffoon. But The Younger Wife,
Yes.
you and I were earlier talking about, you listened to it all on audio. I bounced back and forth. I enjoyed sitting with this book more so than listening to it.
I didn't have the physical
Mhm.
copy, but I really love Caroline Lee, who is the voice of Tully in the audiobook. She does a lot of Leanne Moriarty's
Yeah.
audiobooks. Essentially, if you're an Australian author or you are writing for an Australian voice and Caroline Lee is doing your audiobook,
Meryl Streep.
I'm going to listen to
Yeah.
it. Her voice is perfect. She did Big Little Lies,
Yes.
and her character was the same as Reese Witherspoon's character in the show, and it really translated for me. Like I really got that persona out of it. And same with this book, I could really feel Tully's personality. So I loved that.
And Tully, to me, the way she is and sounds is sort of like, if the author's putting herself into one character, it's Tully for sure.
Yes.
So absolutely love her, and like all her books, they're just quick. It just goes quick.
Yeah.
Okay, shifting gears here. We
Mhm.
wanted to point you in the direction of nonfiction that is exciting, enticing, page turning,
Mhm.
based upon fiction that you might like.
Yes.
So I've got two books here that are among the same vein, but if you enjoy these books in fiction, I think
Mhm.
we're finding a
Yes.
couple of options for nonfiction readers. So let's start here. Long Bright River, Liz Moore. This was a book that we book clubbed back in
Yes.
the day, pre-COVID.
Do you remember who recommended that book?
Was it you?
It was me.
Of course it was.
Yes. I loved that book.
Everybody loved this book,
Mhm.
and it had so much. I can't think of something that gave us more depth of conversation.
Mhm.
There was so much to talk about the addiction, about the sister relationship, about
Mhm.
crime, about poverty, about everything.
And she was so wrapped. Liz Moore wrote about a neighborhood, a city that she knew very well.
Yeah.
And so that was its own character
Yeah.
and all the pieces of that. And very much like what life is.
Right.
Each city has its own characteristics.
Right, a dark side and like the light side and the dark side.
Yeah.
And seeing it from two sisters' perspectives, both tangling with the dark side.
Yeah.
but one, as law enforcement and one as a prostitute, a drug addict. It was a really gripping book and obviously incredibly well researched. And the same I would say for When the Stars Go Dark, Paula McLain, who was a guest on the podcast earlier when this book came out, and she talked to us extensively about the research that she did.
Right.
And this is an unusual book because it is a work of fiction, but she weaves in
A real life.
a
crime.
real true crime story within, because it just happened to parallel with the setting and the crime that was happening that she was writing about. So
Yeah.
it was, I think it was very clever.
Mendocino County.
Yeah.
In California.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because I actually am currently reading a book. It is a work of nonfiction. If you are a true crime enthusiast, is a weird word to say, but
But that applies.
an armchair detective, an online sleuth, if you will. Paul Holes has a new book coming out in April 25th. It's called Unmasked: My Life Solving America's Cold Cases. And if you're familiar with Paul Holes, now, I told you I was going to say this to you off the podcast, off camera. My Favorite Murder has him. If you've listened to that podcast before, My Favorite Murder, love. They have Paul Holes as a guest every now and then.
Okay.
And at some point, and I can't remember if it was from their podcast or from others, because Paul Holes is a very good-looking man, someone came up with Hot for Holes. And
What a nice hashtag that would be, right?
like, I think it embarrasses him too.
Oh.
But he and why does his name escape me right now? Was an armchair sleuth. He's actually, I think he's from Arizona, actually. This is gonna drive me nuts. Billy Jensen.
Okay.
Oh, thank God I figured that out. So Billy Jensen, he and Billy Jensen worked very hard with I'll Be Gone in the Dark, because Paul Holes was working in Contra Costa County as a detective for like 25 plus years, and he was working the Golden State Killer case, and so he was, these are cold cases that he's worked on. Lacey Peterson, if you remember that. I mean,
of course.
JC DeGard, which if you've never read JC DeGard's book, if you know who JC DeGard is, she was kidnapped and held captive at 11 years old, held captive, raped, had children with her rapist. He and his wife had kidnapped her, and she was held captive, I think 16 or 18 years. She wrote a book, but he worked on that case as well. And he goes through cases, even cold cases, into his retirement. That he went in, he retired, and then he came out of retirement because this book is about how all these cases that he's worked on, maybe not all of them, but some prolific ones, and how it not only helped him find resolve, but also kind of took a toll on his own life. Because he was so obsessive with solving these cold cases to get clarity and closure for these families.
Yeah. And I think that's it's so compelling, but I think also very common. That's a job that's very hard to leave behind.
It's a trope too.
Yeah.
You think about all these books and movies and TV shows where it's like the intrepid detective who just can't
leave the job at work. Can't leave the job.
Keep their personal life in check because he's just given so much to it.
And there's a reason for it. I mean, it is reality. Also, along the same vein, I would absolutely recommend, and I just finished listening to this on audio, Tell Me Everything by Erika Krouse. And I kind of like played it on NetGalley. I read the description briefly. I forgot what I read, and then I started playing it. I'm like, what is this? This is really interesting. I almost stopped it because it's billed as a memoir, and it is. However, she prefaces it with based on legality and things. She's changing people's names, even changing some of their physical descriptions as she's telling the story. So then I'm like, well, is it a memoir or isn't it? You know what I mean? Or what is this? Like that guy, the Oprah guy, the A Million Little Pieces or whatever.
Oh yeah.
I stayed with it, and that's, just a couple of pages in. But it's really fascinating about a woman who just seems to have a gift in that people open up to her. And ever since she's little, people are telling her all their secrets, and they're just opening their guts up to her when it's inappropriate in the space, based on her age, whatever. And so she has an interaction in a bookstore with an attorney, like a very high profile attorney, and he starts telling her stuff. And, somebody who is so savvy and smart and guarded in general is like, whoa, why did I? And he hires her as a PI. And she's very bright, this writer, and she's got a master's degree and all of this, but she's just never kind of found her thing.
Right.
And so he kind of broke, and she's always hustling temp jobs and all this stuff. She's done a zillion different jobs, and she's incredibly good at this. And the case that they're working on is a rape investigation at a huge university involving the football players. And it's really disturbing, and it's very triggering for anybody who has gone through any sort of sexual molestation or abuse. So it would be not recommended in that case, because she's bringing her own history of being an abuse survivor as a child into these investigations.
Wow.
So she really can't separate. I mean, she needs to kind of get justice for herself through this.
Right.
But it's just like a big look at the system and how the money of these sports teams and all of this is
healed
completely, and a sort of an ecosystem that creates predators out of maybe guys that wouldn't even have been. And it's just I thought it was fascinating.
It's funny because it's not about the case itself, but I'm pretty sure in Talking with Strangers by Malcolm Gladwell, I'm fairly certain it's that book where they talk about the Stanford rape case and the protection that came from that.
Yes.
And the communication and
all of, and this is very similar. And it's just all of the layers of, it just is like the powerful and the powerless, and the people who can possess and do whatever they want, and the people who have to just go with the flow, and the way. So the premise of the case that he's pursuing is that the university itself is the one that's liable for creating an environment that's actually in violation of Title IX for their federal funding for sports.
Oh, right.
Because you don't have a safe place for females on campus and female athletes based upon the feelings and the behavior.
The environment you've created.
And so it was really, I thought it was a
memoir.
Right. So it's like true crime and memoir, How to Baby, but it reminded me, it immediately made me think of this book and a woman who is carrying a lot of pain and baggage into a search for some answers. And so, it's like this Tell Me Everything, she even makes a reference to, as she's going to see therapists, like, I'm not surprised that so many people who deal with depression or mental illness or whatever become therapists, because you've wasted all this time and money, like trying to heal yourself. And you're the best student of all of this stuff, because you want to heal yourself. And so in this capacity of like criminal justice, people are doing that as well. So it was really good.
I just requested it, but it wasn't on audio any longer.
Oh, because it's just came out. So as of now, if you're listening to this podcast, that this is out and available. Intriguing.
So I'll have to physically read that one if I get approved.
Yeah, it's heavy. So I think we're sending you more in the rom-com arena right now.
Yeah, I mean, down that path. Although I said I'm listening to some thrillers right now, but I can't get away. What can I say? Can't pull myself away.
Well, keep us posted on how the audiobooks and the regular books are going. And I mean, it's springtime. There's a lot of great books. People are going on vacations, summer breaks and whatnot. And so it'll be nice to get maybe some paperbacks and chill out.
Oh, yeah.
Or the Kindle White, which you also sent me in their direction of the Kindle White.
I'm
thankfully.
Right.
I will say, it makes me feel younger because I don't have to wear my readers when I read the Kindle White.
Really?
Strange.
You should tell people that, because
I
don't have readers.
Absolutely have to with every book at any time. And for some reason, the way that is lit, and with I'm sitting out at soccer, like reading with no readers.
I also find it really great because I had to get my oil changed and I waited for it. And it was a little bit longer than oil changes should take. But I just popped it in my bag because it's so light. And I had any of the literal 100 books I have downloaded on it right now.
Would you have been it yourself if you hadn't had it in there?
Well, also like my phone is a 13. It's large, but it's not
No, I don't want to agree on
it's
that.
not conducive to a good reading experience.
Mhm.
So
Agreed.
so just pop that in your bag, and it's waterproof.
See, she's doing the good work.
The pool. It's perfect for the pool.
All right, off to the pool. Thanks for listening. See you next time.
Thanks for listening to Olivia's Book Club, the podcast. I'm your host, Olivia Fierro. Our producer is Margaret Stewart. Our editor is Nick Sanchez. You can send us an email with your thoughts or your book recommendations. Olivia's Book Club at azfamily.com is the address. And you can check out Olivia's Book Club on Facebook or find us on Instagram. Hello, Bookstagrammers, at olivias.bookclub. And Margaret is at Overbooked and Overdue. Make sure to rate and subscribe to this podcast and tell your friends. You can find us on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and Amazon Music.